America has all kinds of pressing problems that don't get enough attention. Consider more than 500,000 people are homeless in America. Tonight, we're going to get some facts and thoughts on all of this, plus the politics of poverty, with our friend, Professor Michael Eric Dyson. Here is the context. Donald Trump using a new interview with Tucker Carlson to talk about homelessness and to make the false claim that it all started 2 years ago.
But New York City, San Francisco, Los Angeles, they've got a major problem with...
It's very sad.
...with filth.
Very sad.
Why is that?
It's a phenomenon that started 2 years ago. It's disgraceful. I'm going to maybe, and I'm looking at it very seriously, we may intercede. We may do something to get that whole thing cleaned up. It's inappropriate.
They may do something to clean it up. This is Trump in interview mode, punditry. And it obscures the fact that he's the president. He's in charge of the U.S. Housing Department. He could call Ben Carson any time to get their statistics, which show homelessness has fallen a bit during the Obama administration and is now roughly flat. Or he could push policies, even without Congress, to help homeless people get shelter and then jobs. So real quick, if you look at what HUD is actually doing in the Trump era, it's working harder. I should say it's working to make it harder for homeless people to actually get shelter. This is a recent HUD proposal that would allow shelters to discriminate, to deny people admittance to shelters based on their sex or gender identity, a plan that would potentially increase the number of people on the street. That's what the Trump administration is doing while he uses these interviews, this bully pulpit, to try to play up some sort of grim portrayal of American homelessness.
It's disgraceful. The people living there are living in hell, too. Some of them have mental problems where they don't even know they're living that way. We've never had this in our lives before in our country. Police officers are getting sick just by walking the beat. It's destroying a whole way of life.
10 seconds. Michael Eric Dyson, a professor at Georgetown University, the author of What Truth Sounds Like. I wanted to talk to you about this because there is something important underneath some of the false claims. What do you see when the president says that, and what do you see in the wider politics of poverty?
Yeah, the famous anthropologist V.Y. Modimbi talks about the demonization of the urban, and that's what we see going on here. There's a stigma being associated with these people and these who are our fellow citizens. And what's amazing is that instead of taking credit for the dip in the numbers, the decline in homelessness, and then going forward to suggest that maybe he can alter some of his policies, call Ben Carson up, as you suggested, stop the kind of low-income housing, dragging of people through the mud, and then give them opportunities. Talk about substance abuse treatment. Talk about mental health delivery. Talk about permanent housing. These are the kind of substantive public policies that can be put forth to alleviate and ameliorate the situation that's going on there. But instead, he wants to hype it up to suggest that there's a kind of Dickens-like, urban landscape that is prevailing, and he will be the heroic figure to step in as savior and remove them. But you
mentioned Dickens.
Right.
Here's a little bit more of the president, because the way he talks about it, the filth, the disgrace, it's evocative. It may not be accurate, but it's a portrait. And it's, why does he need to paint this portrait, does he think, as he unveils his reelection? Take a look.
This is the liberal establishment. This is what I'm fighting. I don't know if they're afraid of votes. I don't know if they really believe that this should be taking place. These are usually sanctuary cities run by very liberal people, and the states are run by very liberal people. But the thing that nobody can figure out is, do these governors or mayors, do they really think this is a positive? Do they really think this is okay? Because it's not. It's destroying their city.
Michael?
Well, it's astonishing. He could read some David Hume to talk about causality, one thing causing another. Are they corollary? Are they corroborating? The thing is, the president here is trying to demonize, the so-called progressives and liberals and Democratic Party as if they are the cause of this, while he's president now, while he's sitting in the bully pulpit to be able to speak out against this issue or to do something about it. And what he has proved to us, Ari, is the fact that he has a pen that is active, and he can go in there and he can issue executive orders,
Right.
and he can do things that will actually make a substantive difference. He can call his Secretary of Housing and tell Ben Carson, look, you got to do something different than what you're doing now if we're going to seriously address these issues. But the point is, he wants to paint a portrait of Democrats and progressives and those who are concerned about these issues as somehow out of step, out of tune, allowing their public policies to undercut and undermine the very people that they are ostensibly meant to help.
Yeah.
And the reality is that his public policy ain't doing nothing. It's not just a matter of commas, it's semicolons. It's all the grammar that we can pull out to suggest that the president's got a problem.
Look at you. From the numerical to the grammatical, I expect nothing less. Before I let you go, I did mention earlier in the broadcast, we also were going to get you a little bit on 2020. We come at it different ways. Jesse Jackson is still, as you know, a big leader, and he summons people to have these kind of conversations, particularly about his issues of civil rights.
Right.
Here's Mayor Pete today talking at that event. Take a look.
Right.
Look, when you're new on the scene and you're not from a community of color, you got to work much harder in order to earn that trust, because trust is largely a function of quantity time. I'm committed to doing that work, but I think the most important question is, will our policy benefit Black Americans and all Americans? And if that happens, and if I can show that, I think the politics will start to take care of themselves.
Professor, you hear him talking about trust. As you know, it's been said, trust, a word you seldom hear from us. We don't sleep, we keep one eye up. Talk about building trust, that's Hove, but I'm talking about building trust for such a young mayor, such an untraditional candidate.
Yeah, it's hard because on the one hand, look, you take him at his word. He's a breath of fresh air. He at least admits when he does something wrong. He issues an apology. But the problem is that when you had the opportunity, when you had a black police chief and you got rid of him, and you think for good reason, Mr. Mayor, because he was taping cops, but he was taping them because they were doing racist things that needed to be exposed and they couldn't be exposed otherwise. So instead of hiring another black police chief or another, you hire two more guys, and then the person who was there on the police force who ends up killing recently the young man is himself not taken to task. So the thing is, you got to close the distance between what you say and what you do. Another great rapper of an earlier century said in T.S. Eliot, between the ideal and the reality falls the shadow. And Pete Buttigieg has to look at the shadow with a great big old spotlight that is both self-reflexive and also looking on the landscape of public policy. Yes, be sorry. Yes, you got to talk about people whose interests are there, but you got to also move from ideal to reality.
A lot of people forget the T.S. Eliot B-sides. We learned so much from you, sir. If it wasn't a TV show, I would be honored to call you and just hear you break all this stuff down, from the poverty conversation, which is so important, to your views on 2020. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.